It's CCSD Today with your host, Erica Taylor. This week, we step inside the Charleston GradNation Community Summit. Join Mayor Riley and other guests as they speak about the Tri-County's high school graduation rate and hear from White House Senior Policy Advisor Rafael Lopez. CCSD Today. We'll be right back.
I'm Jenna Dewan Tatum.
I'm Julia Ormond.
I'm Machen Amick.
And I'm Rachel Boston.
Every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer.
Breast cancer will claim over 39,000 lives this year. But that won't be me.
Or me.
I won't let that be me.
The end of breast cancer starts with me.
And you.
And you.
And you.
Go to mylifetime.com to get informed and involved.
Brought to you by Cruise Chevy. You've got a friend in the car business.
I want to begin by thanking Mindy Sturm and her wonderful sidekick, Katie Tumbleston, who I have the privilege of working with them. Mindy's the head, Katie's assistant of the Mayor's Office of Children, Youth, and Families for their role in creating this meeting, receiving the grant from America's Promise, and all they do for our region. Let's give them a big round of applause. We're really fabulous. As we all know, it's so joyful when you come to work with bright, caring people who are always looking to make things better, and that's why we're here today. I thank Rafael Lopez for coming here from Washington. I thank Beth Reynolds, Jack Mitchell, Elaine Russell, you will hear from shortly, and all of you and those who helped put this together. My dear sister Jane Riley Gambrell, Director of Communities and Schools, Bonnie Bella, Trident United Way, Cale Lom, City of North Charleston, Office of Youth, Mayor's Office of Children, Youth, and Families, Courtney Howard, College of Charleston Center for Partnership to Improve Education, John Reed and Sarah Perry, Tri-County Cradle to Career, Melissa Stowasser, Trident Technical College, Jack, who you'll hear from in a minute, Erica Taylor of the Charleston County School District, and all of you. I did that. This could be a very short speech, I promise. Not even a speech, few remarks. But I did that because the comprehensivity of the energy and engagement in this initiative goes to the core of why we are here. H.L. Mencken said that for every serious, complicated problem, there's always one neat, simple solution that's always wrong. The fact of the matter is that if it was a serious, complicated problem and capable of a simple, neat, single solution, then the problem wouldn't exist. The challenge, the problem, the challenge, the fierce responsibility we have in America to make sure that our children graduate from high school requires a most comprehensive, engaged, creative, all hands on deck, whatever it takes approach. And that's why this summit is so important. And we have made great progress in this community, and there are many people here that are responsible for that. And Anita Zucker, and I start naming people, and I'm gonna get in big trouble. But Anita Zucker and Tad Legacy are two examples. They're private citizens. They are always there in any important education community initiative. They are there. They're with their time, their energy, their leadership, their intellect. Their resources, and because of that and the work of so many of you, we have made great progress in helping our children advance in the educational system, and providing better reading and math skills, food and clothing, so they can go to school together, if you will, and the wonderful work that the Communities and Schools does, one at a time, one focused energy, commitment to resource building, and the reading programs and the mentoring programs and so much more that the community is doing. We have made great progress. But the summit is here, and you're here because we're not there yet. We have a ways to go. And every day, the responsibility for that is a child graduating from high school increases. Because every day, it becomes more difficult for a person to have a happy and successful life if they don't have a high school diploma. 50 years ago, that wasn't the case. 25 years ago, that wasn't the case. That's the case now, and increasingly will be so. So today's summit, thanks to all of you, give us the foundational resources to begin this next essentially important journey. And when the day is over, I know that you will have a whole new list or kit of ideas and resources and initiatives, which I certainly pledge to work with you on. One suggestion that I have is, and Mindy could reasonably throw her glass of water at me, but I think every year it would be great if we get back together and just see how things are going. Don't make this a great initiative and get going, and then don't have report cards. See how we're going. What worked great last year? What do we need to do that we aren't doing? What is another idea that a community or school district or state had that is really setting a new standard or opportunity? We got to stick with this. The community always got to stick with this. Our children deserve it. It's our responsibility to do what we can to give them that essential tool to have a successful, happy, and fulfilled life. Thank you very much.
The law firm of Young Clement Rivers has been serving the Charleston Low Country since 1968. All of the lawyers of Young Clement Rivers are proud to be partners with the Charleston County School District. We are convinced that the hard work of the school district employees and staff prepares our young people to face the challenges of the future. We look forward to continuing our partnership and in helping the school district to meet its standard of excellence.
Education is one of the most critical issues facing American businesses, our community, and our country. One of the ways America's promise keeps us on track for our national goal is to focus on the power of convening local communities like this. And engaging local communities is what's going to change the dynamic, not individuals, but as a group. Currently, 1 in 5 students does not graduate from high school with their peers. And of those that do, many are not fully prepared for college or the careers that follow. But there is hope. Nationally, high school graduate rates are increasing. As was announced earlier this year, for the first time ever as a nation, we are on track to meet the goal of a 90% graduation rate by the year 2020. We can certainly be encouraged by this progress, but it's not time for a victory lap. Instead, it's time to put the pedal to the metal. Local organizations and community leaders like you are in the front lines of education each and every day. And by bringing these groups together through GradNation summits, we can focus on finding solutions that will work best for the students at risk of dropping out, and each has a unique community.
This summit's important for many reasons, but one really stands out. You as in a community have an opportunity to examine the work that you've been doing, but look and see how you can make improvements and how you can further your efforts to ensure that all young people are graduating from high school prepared for success. Your summit's part of a larger national movement that we've talked about earlier, the GradNation campaign. In 2010, America's Promise launched the GradNation campaign with the ambitious goal to reach a 90% graduation rate by 2020. As Jack mentioned, we've made great progress. As a nation, we're about 80% now, but that still means too many young people are not graduating from high school on time and prepared for the future, and so there's still a lot of work ahead of us. The GradNation campaign really wouldn't be possible without the work and dedication of all of you in your community in Charleston. Like so much in this country, change happens from the community level up. And so the work you're doing really is essential to helping America's Promise and our nation reach the GradNation goal. You may know, I don't know how familiar you are with America's Promise, the foundation of our work really is based on what we call the 5 promises, the 5 fundamental resources that we say that all young people need to succeed. Caring adults, safe places, an effective education, a healthy start, and opportunities to serve. And we know all the work that all of you are doing with your organizations and collectively, it's helping to ensure that all the young people in Charleston are receiving these 5 promises. We know that every young person can learn and can succeed, and the ultimate goal is to create conditions locally and nationally where they can thrive and have a successful future.
Our mission is to support learners and transform lives by connecting what we know from research, not only ours, but the work of so many researchers across the world, with evidence-based solutions and what we're finding in the way of emerging practice. So it's looking at what's happening in the field, what we know is working, and make connections among those things. You know, we could go into school and merely say, oh, you have a dropout problem? Well, let us just talk to your at-risk kids. But that would be an isolated way to approach it. So instead, we go in and say, let us see what leadership is focused on. What is the vision, mission, and focus, and is everybody matched up with that? And let's look at what's going on in classrooms. So are there rigorous expectations for all kids? And do all teachers convince kids that they too can learn and achieve inside their rooms? And is the climate one where kids feel engaged and feel like I'm important here, no matter what the color of my skin or the wealth of my parents? And are there supports that match what we know are the problems of the kids inside that school? Do we have interventions that set that up? And do we know what those predictive factors are under the individual and other domains? Do we know which ones are present in our population and are proactively going after the things that will counter that? That, in an action plan, is collective impact.
Some problems are tough. Reaching your customers shouldn't be. Blue Wave and Comcast have the creative edge to make you stand out from the crowd and connect with your customers. Whether you need a commercial for television, video for your website, or a custom-made website, we are the easy solution for every advertising problem.
I'm Jenna Dewan Tatum.
I'm Julia Ormond.
I'm Machen Amick. And I'm Rachel Boston.
Every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer.
Breast cancer will claim over 39,000 lives this year, but that won't be me or me.
I won't let that be me.
The end of breast cancer starts with me.
And you.
And you. And you. Go to mylifetime.com to get informed and involved.
Brought to you by Cruise Subaru of Charleston. You've got a friend in the car business.
Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Rafael Lopez.
Good morning. Jane, thank you so much for that introduction. I have to start by saying that last night I had the pleasure of eating dinner here at the restaurant with a group of folks, James among them, and Mindy and several other folks, and I've never had shrimp and grits as good as the shrimp and grits that I had last night. And I've had them in many restaurants across the country, but clearly South Carolina knows how to make shrimp and grits. I just had to say that right off the bat. As a foodie and someone who really appreciates the character and historic nature of communities, I took time after dinner and just walked around the neighborhood for about an hour and a half or so, and just sort of was struck by the architecture, right, and the streets, and it was dark at night, but just knowing what an important place in history this town holds, right, and the Tri-County region. And both its history as well as its future, right, is being written by people like you in this room. The growth mindset really tries to look at new research on brain development. So we know, for example, that in the first 5 years of a child's life, extraordinary things are happening in the brain of a child, right? The neurons are being connected in ways that we have never imagined and we're just learning more of. The research and the science has confirmed over time that the way in which children grow and develop and learn to love and learn to treat each other and learn to be members of the society all happens and is formed by those first 5 years of life. Similarly, we teach children about whether or not their brain is a muscle or not. And surprisingly, most kids think, and I would venture to guess most of us in this room, as I did, think that you either are born smart or you're not. You're either born with a high IQ or you're not. You either are born to do math or you're not. You're either destined to become a powerful person in the community or you're not. And during the visit at Zuger yesterday, there was an exchange with one young woman, and I was struck by her because she was in the class. If this was the classroom, she was standing in the far left corner as we were taking lots of questions. And they asked me everything from, like, am I rich? Do I live at the White House? What do I do every day? I mean, it was really an amazing exchange, right? And there were pre-engineering students working on STEM issues, right? Many of which, are just beginning to imagine what their lives are going to look like. But in the corner of this room was a young woman. I'm not sure if she was in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. I'd venture to guess she's probably an 8th grader. There must have been about a dozen or so students around her. And she was clearly a leader. And she was a leader because she was distracting, right? She was having these little conversations with folks. And I kept my eye on her, and every now and then I'd walk over a little closer to her. And we had this exchange, and I said to her, I said, so she mentioned that she struggles with her behavior. And I said, do you think you are destined to be that way? And interestingly, some of her peers nodded yes. And so I took that moment to have this exchange with her, and I said, well, do you think that's a choice you make? And she said, no, it's a choice I make. And then I talked about the brain as a muscle, which is that the growing body of scientists and research points us to the fact that if you shift from a fixed mindset of doing work or thinking or educating children to a growth mindset, you could have remarkable improvements in low-cost ways. And let me give you a couple examples. So a fixed mindset says that their beliefs about themselves in school cannot change, that they struggle to learn new things. So when students have a mindset, they believe that their intelligence, when they experience difficulty, is something they cannot overcome, and undermines their intelligence, right, and their learning. And this is all from a growth mindset national study. Interestingly, in a growth mindset, they believe that intelligence can be developed because the teachers, their parents, and the people in the community say that it can be developed. So that muscle can be flexed, that muscle can be developed and learned over time. The simple act of teaching people, teaching kids, reteaching us, I can't do math. I can do math. I'm not good at this. I'm good at some things. And using that basic research and that basic knowledge to inform the way in which we engage all children. Imagine what that would look like in your Tri-County area. That simple knowledge that the way in which we teach and honor our children could be dramatically improved at all aspects of the community. And when we think about how we actually implement a cradle-to-career concept, it's every point in that continuum that matters immensely, right? Prenatal care, the exchange between a loving mother and the child, the exchange between the mother, the family, the community, and preschool, whatever it is, family-based, home-based, community-based, center-based, right? Whatever structure you have in your community. The exchange between the family and the introduction to elementary school. The transfer between elementary to middle, the transfer from middle to high school, from high school to college and career. All those transition points matter immensely. Because if America stands for anything, it stands for the idea of opportunity for everybody. The notion that no matter who you are, or where you came from, or the circumstances into which you are born, if you work hard, if you take responsibility, then you can make it in this country. That's the core idea.
I'm Jenna Dewan Tatum.
I'm Julia Ormond.
I'm Machen Amick. And I'm Rachel Boston.
Every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer.
Breast cancer will claim over 39,000 lives this year, but that won't be me or me.
I won't let that be me.
The end of breast cancer starts with me.
And you.
And you.
And you.
Go to mylifetime.com to get informed and involved.
Locally sponsored by Ford. Ford is in the race for the cure.
The law firm of Young Clement Rivers has been serving the Charleston Low Country since 1968. All of the lawyers of Young Clement Rivers are proud to be partners with the Charleston County School District. We're convinced that the hard work of the school district employees and staff prepares our young people to face the challenges of the future. We look forward to continuing our partnership and in helping the school district to meet its standard of excellence.
Here's a question for you. What does this look like? It may look like a blank screen, but it's really an opportunity for you to reach your customers. With a great television commercial, video for your website, or website design, Comcast and Blue Wave Productions can create the right message to get you noticed. Call today and take the opportunity to make your business stand out from the crowd.
Along the way, I've met a couple of kids, and I wanted to spend a moment just lifting up a couple of few tidbits of some of those children. So one of the kids that I've met and worked with is a little girl named Mindy. And Mindy was the oldest in her family. And she had several children, several younger brothers and sisters. But Mindy was really good in school, and she worked really hard at trying to get access to after-school programs, but just didn't have the money to get to and from a lot of them. So she was able to work with one of her teachers, Miss Dana Stroud, in making sure that Miss Dana Stroud could get her back home when the bus system in her rural community couldn't get her home in time. There's another little boy I've worked with named Joseph. Joseph lives in a family where alcohol abuse is rampant. And in this particular family, it goes back several generations. And Joseph has really struggled with trying to get to school and be a sort of a happy child in the context of always worrying about his dad, who's an alcoholic. I've met and worked with a little girl named Beth. And Beth, who lives in a family where domestic violence has crossed generations. And in her family, Beth's family, she's the one who has to call the police when her mother is being beaten and has to clean up the blood and has to make sure that she can get her mom the right kinds of services. And Beth has had to do this for a long time. I've met and worked with a little boy named Morris. Morris is someone who actually had this hidden talent that was discovered by one of his teachers. And Morris was encouraged to take up a couple of instruments. And lo and behold, Morris has been able to really succeed in music. And music was an escape for him, because music provided in his life an escape to all that challenged him. And Morris had a teacher named Mark Takeuchi. And Mr. Takeuchi made sure that Morris could get to the summer music program every single day when the bus system wouldn't get him from his home to the school where the music program was. And Mr. Takeuchi picked him up in the morning, drove him to the music program, and drove him back home every day to make sure that Morris could participate in that summer music program. And there's another little girl named Nancy. Nancy is someone who really worked hard in school and was able to imagine herself going to college, but she was really ashamed of the fact that she had to ask for help from someone to actually fill out the FAFSA form and disclose that her family had been recipients of public benefits. And Nancy had to work really hard to figure out how to overcome that shame in order to fill out those forms. Now, in each of these stories that I've given you, I'm curious by a show of hands, how many of you know people or kids just like that? Raise your hand. Most of you do, right? Interestingly, I haven't been completely truthful with those names. So I chose those names from people who actually are in this room right now. But the only thing that's different about those stories is that they're pieces of my own story. They are pieces of my own personal narrative. And I could tell you a whole bunch more stories about where those came from. Much the way in which I could tell you a whole bunch of stories about the kids I met at Zucker Middle School yesterday. Because behind the dropout are stories like mine. Behind the dropout are stories like yours. And interestingly, all of those struggles, right? I imagine you have your own struggles. I can't say them for you, but I bet you money you have a story there somewhere. And if not in your own family, you've got it with an uncle or an aunt or a grandparent or a neighbor. And sometimes we just don't act when we see it happening. We just don't act. But when you do act, and you do say to that child, the way in which Mr. Takeuchi said to me, and the way in which Miss Stroud said to me, you are worth something. You have talent. And you've heard that for the first time, it will transform you. Much the way in which I imagine for all of you in this room, someone did for you. Someone did for you. And I get to stand up here speaking to you as the first person in my family to graduate from high school, the first to graduate from college, the first to graduate from graduate school, the first to have a professional job, and the first in my family to say that I work for the President of the United States. And that happened because of people like you. So, regardless of party or religious affiliation or your own background, don't fall prey to the cynics in this country. Act. Take up the tools that you have available to you now, today, and lift up the story of South Carolina. Because coming from the West Coast, I have a particular story that was told to me of South Carolina, not the one you know. But imagine for a second that if you use the tools that are now available to us, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Vine, all those things that some of us sort of make fun of, right? I happen to like them, but some of us in the room I know make fun of them. What if you lifted up your voices and said, we can do it differently in South Carolina? Even before the evaluation's been written, you can tell the story of a Nancy or a Beth or a Morris or a Rodney or a Joseph or a Rafael. What if you lifted up those stories in a profound and powerful way and say, we will do things differently in South Carolina? Care like your life depended on it, because it does. And what happens in South Carolina has to matter to everyone in this country, because you have in your hands the ability to transform this place so that you will actually surpass your 90% goal and get to a point where every single child in South Carolina will graduate from high school. Not because it is a pipe dream, because it is possible. So thank you for all of your hard work. Thank you for struggling day in and day out, despite the hard challenges that you overcome every day. I'm grateful to stand here with you, and thank you so much for the invitation to join you in South Carolina.